Welcome to HMS, let the power flow. Feel the rhythm in your veins. Every rapid nitro flame.
All right, so in these series of videos, we are covering our very last dot point that we need to cover for training for improved performance in HSC HMS. The last dot point is obviously looking at drug use in sport, okay? So I'm gonna go through, hopefully it'll only be 2 videos, I shouldn't say that, but we'll cover all the things you need to know about drugs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So first of all, drugs, legal usages, okay? So a lot of drugs are banned in sports because they do offer a competitive advantage, okay? And it's not really testing the athlete and who is the better athlete. It becomes as to who is testing who has the better drug regime. And we're not trying to do that, all right? So, legal uses. Some athletes have medical requirements for drug usage and can attain a therapeutic use exemption, or TEU for short. All right, so if you have a TEU for a drug which is otherwise banned, it allows you to use it. So this allows them to take otherwise banned substances for health reasons rather than performance. So I've given a couple of examples here. We've got beta-2 agonists, which is just the technical word for asthma puffers. Ritalin, which is common for ADHD. Insulin, which is used for diabetes. Now, if you were an athlete and you didn't have one of these conditions and you did have one of these, so this is a very, very potent stimulant, and insulin is a very potent anabolic, okay? So there are people that do take Ritalin for performance enhancing reasons. There are people that do take insulin for performance enhancing reasons. But if you have a TEU, then you can take these drugs legally, so that when you get drug tested and it comes up in your system, providing the ranges are actually in the nominated range for your prescription, then you're all okay, all right? So for example, if you were taking Ritalin and you were on 3 10 milligram tablets of methylphenidate every day, and then you happen to have a random drug test and they tested you and you had way more than that in your system, well, you're no longer actually adhering to your TEU, and therefore you can get banned and all the negative consequences of being drug tested and found out. So there are legal uses of drugs, and now we're going to go through the naughty ones. Okay, so let's look at illegal drug use, all right? So the use of using drugs to enhance an athlete's performance is called doping. The World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA, regularly compiles and updates the list of drugs and substances which are banned. Okay, so the list obviously started very small many years ago, and then obviously over time it's grown and they add things to it, but sometimes they also take things off the list because they find out through scientific research that, oh, actually it's not as performance enhancing as we thought, okay? But they don't tell you when they update the list, okay? I mean, I'm sure you can probably subscribe to some sort of emailing list that tells you when there are changes to the list, but I'll get to that in a sec. So in Australia, the Sport Integrity Australia Unit, so SIA, oversee drug testing and enforcement. So the SIA will take the list and they know what they're testing for when they test athletes here in Australia, okay? However, overall, it is the athlete's responsibility to ensure that they keep up to date with what is on the list of banned substances, okay? Now, most of the time, for most athletes, this isn't a concern because most athletes aren't taking any substances which could even be considered to be on the list, all right? However, sometimes athletes do require either TEUs that we just spoke about before, or they are taking certain supplements, okay? Because a lot of times supplements start off as legal supplements and then they become illegal substances, and therefore doping. It's up to the athlete's responsibility to ensure that what they are putting in their body is not on the list, okay? And if they're unsure, they need to check, okay? So you can't rely on your coach, you can't rely on your team, you can't rely on or wait for the SIA to come and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, because by the time these guys are testing you and it comes up in your blood, that's it. There's no sort of like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. You need to realize, or all athletes need to realize what's going on here. So let's go through a list of the drugs that are commonly used, you know, the main ones that are on the banned list that shouldn't be used. All right. So our first category of illegal drugs are our PIEDs, or our performance and image enhancing drugs, okay? And I could have given you way more details on each of these here, but this will be enough. And if you want to know more, research it. So the first category, we've got anabolic steroids and human growth hormone. So anabolic steroids abbreviated by AAS and HGH, for example, nandrolone. Taking these types of drugs will increase muscular hypertrophy in the body. It will therefore, because you have more muscle, increase your power output, increase your speed, but also increases your recovery significantly so that you can train more, all right? So it's a double whammy. So not only do you get more out of your training, but you can train more, so then you get more out of your training, and then you can train. You see how the cycle keeps going, all right? Very commonly used, well, not commonly used, you know, common sports that you would find people who are taking AAS or HGH. You've got weightlifters, shot putters, rugby players, sprinters, anyone who really needs to maximize their amount of power and strength, all right? But because we're also talking about image enhancing, you could think about bodybuilders and fitness competitors. A lot of them will take AAS and HGH to increase lean muscle tissue while dropping body fat and therefore winning their competitions as well. So our next one, we've got erythropoietin or EPO. Okay, so EPO is a hormone that increases your red blood cell production in the body. And because you have more red blood cells, think about the things red blood cells do. It will enhance your aerobic capacity and delaying fatigue. Okay, because remember, red blood cells transport oxygen around the body, so now you can just transport more oxygen. And therefore you don't get as fatigued as much because you can keep operating. So common examples, marathon runners, endurance cyclists, and I wrote TDF there. You look up Tour de France, EPO, and you'll see heaps of people over the years have been caught with using EPO. Then our third category within our performance and image enhancing drugs, we've got stimulants such as ephedrine or dexamphetamine. So stimulants stimulate the central nervous system to increase alertness, reaction time, while masking fatigue. I probably should also add there, because we're talking about image enhancing, they also increase metabolism, which therefore makes you lose weight. Common examples, you've got boxers, swimmers, so people that need to do high intensity work for a period of time, so not necessarily looking at endurance here, all right? Or a lot of people, so like synchronized swimmers, gymnasts will use it for the image enhancing effects because they want to look a certain way in their sports, so they take a stimulant to help them drop weight. So all of those reasons are, I guess we'll talk about the health implications a bit later in this series, but they are the performance and image enhancing drug categories and what they do and examples of people that use it. So we've got more illegal drugs to cover, so I'll rub this off and we'll keep going. All right, so to round out our section on illegal drugs that athletes could use. So we've already covered our PIEDs, but there are other categories. So these are three others that athletes may be using and maybe in conjunction with the PIEDs too. So other drugs may include things like masking agents. So masking agents work in the body to either dilute urine, so basically pushing fluid into your urine, so your urine becomes less concentrated. So like diuretics, which are also here. So I'll put it up here too. Diuretics, okay? But also there's some neat drugs that actually expand the plasma content in your blood. So if you imagine, plasma is like the main water component of blood. So putting more water into your blood, so it dilutes your blood as well. So that when those athletes go to get a urine test or a blood test to see if they're using anabolic steroids, the level that's detected in their bloodstream or their urine is below the level that they say it's a confirmed test. So therefore they say the athlete isn't using the drugs, when in fact they may be using the drugs, all right? Our next one, we've got weight control and aesthetics. So athletes may use things like diuretics, but also laxatives to drastically drop fluid, reducing weight and increasing muscle definition, okay? So this is not only for like aesthetic athletes like gymnasts and bodybuilders, but also for people that need to make a weight class quickly, like boxers and weightlifters. So that's why like a lot of the time, if you've ever watched them, like boxers or MMA fighters or whatever doing a weigh-in, they look really sick and tired, and sometimes they actually do faint. A lot of the time bodybuilders will actually faint on stage as well, because of the dangers related to using diuretics and laxatives to drop weight. Because if you drop so much fluid from your body that you become severely dehydrated, then obviously you are going to pass out. So not good. Yeah, and then also the diuretic thing also helps as a masking agent. Finally, we've got this last little category, which is more about pain suppression and sedation. So athletes can use drugs such as corticosteroids to acutely reduce inflammation. So you might get like a cortisol injection into like a ruptured Achilles tendon to reduce the inflammation there so that you can keep playing, okay? So enabling them to play through injury. So if you've ever like rolled an ankle and your ankle swells right up, well, you get a cortisol injection into that ankle and the swelling just goes back to a normal ankle. Doesn't mean you're healed, okay? So hence the word acutely, and obviously if you continue to play on that injury, all you're actually doing is really making it worse, okay? Which is why it's banned. Also using narcotics such as oxycodone to eliminate pain. So if, let's say you are like the superstar AFL player and you've got the grand final on Saturday, but you've got like a massive, swollen knee because you've got some, MCL damage or something. Before the game, you pop some oxycodone to reduce the pain, you take some cortisol injections straight into the knee joint to reduce the inflammation, and you go and play, and then lo and behold, halfway through the match, you get in a bad tackle, and that's it, your knee's blown out and your whole career's over. So that's bad, hence why it's illegal. So there are categories of illegal drugs. So we'll get rid of this, and then we'll start talking about the health concerns as to what can actually go wrong if you decide to take these drugs. Okay, I could have killed you with so many details here, but you're really not going to remember it, so I've tried to minimize it as much as possible. So health implications. What are the problems with taking drugs? Okay, and not all these drugs are illegal, mind you. Which I'll touch on at the end. So health implications, so not only do drugs pose an unfair advantage to the athlete, but they are also banned due to the negative health risks, okay? So anabolic steroids, cardiac disease, so all heart damage, okay, etc. Blood pressure, sexual impairment because you're injecting yourself with testosterone, your body no longer makes it, same for females. Mood disorders, so you get angry to the point where actually a lot of heavy AAS users end up unfortunately taking their own lives because of the ongoing effects of it. So HGH, we've got enlarged bones and heart, but also not only just like enlarged bones here, but enlarged bones in your face and your feet and your hands, so you end up like all mangled up. Diabetes, chronic joint pain, stimulants, heart problems, addiction, anxiety disorders. EPO, we've got like thickened blood, cardiac disease, stroke. Okay, so you can sort of start to think about it a little bit logically. If you know what the drugs do, you can sort of nut out what the health implication will be. So if you get stuck in a test, you can sort of think about, EPO, what's happening? Oh, it's putting red blood cells into more red blood cells, so therefore my blood gets thicker. What would be the problem with thick blood? Cardiac disease, stroke, etc. So you can sort of work it out. Diuretics and laxatives, okay, so dehydration, which will lead to kidney failure, eating disorders as well, so like taking a diuretic doesn't make you have an eating disorder, but usually people who are taking diuretics and laxatives for, figure competitions end up having eating disorders, so they're related. Beta blockers, we didn't touch on beta blockers before. So beta blockers can be legal or illegal, depending on what use you're having it. So they lower your heart rate, okay? They used to be very popular before EPO sort of hit the scene, because if you're an aerobic athlete and you are taking a medication to lower your heart rate, therefore that's going to actually increase your upper ceiling, so therefore you can technically work harder in the aerobic system, all right? But because it does lower your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure, the negatives are far outweigh the positives there. Breathing difficulties, become faint and, etc. Now, NSAIDs are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So you've probably got some at home, like Nurofen is a very popular NSAID. Panadol is not, mind you. If you take too many of these, you can end up with liver, kidney, and gastrointestinal tract damage. Okay, a lot of people that take lots of NSAIDs end up with like kidney stones as well, which are very, very painful to urinate out, so I've been told, so you don't want any of that. And finally, our narcotics and steroidal anti-inflammatories. So these steroidal anti-inflammatories are like the next step up from NSAIDs. Very, very easy to become addicted to them and leading to mood disorders because you just feel cranky when you don't take away all the pain that life is presenting you. We spoke about oxycodone before, but also codeine, which you can get over the counter, but usually you need to have a driver's license and stuff for that. So they're just some real, 3 health implications for the majority of drugs that athletes and people would be taking.